Hello and welcome to today's program. I am Monica Verma. Before we start with today's topic, I would like to introduce our subject expert to you all, Mr. Atul Sinha, Assistant Professor who is currently teaching graphics and animation at Anwar Jamal Kidwai Mass Communication Research Center, Jamia Millia Islamia. In today's session, we are going to cover these aspects related to printing: printing methods, letterpress, cylinder, rotary, gravure, screen, offset, plate making, and types of paper. From Phoenician stone tablets to Gutenberg, printing process has experienced many revolutionary changes over the past decades. Though the main purpose of printing has persisted, this purpose is the need for people to communicate. Here is a very brief history of the business of printing. Before we start discussing about the history of printing, let us define what exactly printing is. Printing, in its broad sense, is any process whereby one or more identical copies are produced from a master image. Here, the master can range from an inscription engraved in stone to an illustration cut into a woodblock or a text stored as digital information in a computer. Image transfer from master to copy is usually accomplished with ink, and the transferring agent is the most often the printing press. The development of new technologies has blurred traditional definitions of printing. However, office copiers, for example, copy master images using electrostatically charged graphite toner. Printing as a process started in 3500 BC by the use of cylinder seals in Mesopotamia. Then came woodblock printing with existing examples from China dating back to before 220 AD and Egypt to the 4th century. Later developments in printing include the movable type, first developed by Bai Xing in China, and the printing press, a more efficient printing process developed by Johannes Gutenberg in the 15th century. Next was movable type, invented in China in the 11th century. Since the Chinese written language is based not on letters but ideograms, the printers had to use a great number of typefaces, and this still is a problem in such languages as Chinese, Japanese, or Korean. In Europe, the same method was invented by the German printer Johannes Gutenberg in the middle of the 15th century. The high quality and low price of the Gutenberg Bible, 1455, established the dominance of movable type of printing presses that quickly spread throughout the continent. Unlike block printing, the movable type used metallic pieces, each representing a letter, and the letters were assembled by hand to form a text. The metallic pieces had an advantage that they could be used over and over again without much waste of time and material. Not until 1886 was the linotype invented. By this technique, instead of assembling the metallic pieces by hand, a keyboard-driven device was used to cast lines of characters automatically. A further development brought about the monotype system, which made the typesetting procedure faster. All these mechanical devices were replaced in the 1960s when electronic means of composing pages became the regular procedure of the printing industry. Now let us discuss different methods of printing: cylinder, rotogravure, letterpress, flexography, gravure, screen, offset, electrophotography, digital. The cylinder seal used for cylinder printing was made from hard stone, glass or ceramics. Many varieties of material such as hematite, obsidian, statite, amethyst and carnelian were used to make cylinder seals, but lapis lazuli was mainly popular because of the beauty of the blue stone. However, most Mesopotamian cylinder seals form an image through the use of depressions in the cylinder surface. Some cylinder seals print images using raised areas on the cylinder. The former are used primarily on wet clays, the latter, sometimes referred to as roller stamps, are used to print images on cloth and other similar flat surfaces. Cylinder seals are a form of impression seal, a classification which includes the stamp seal and finger ring seal. Rotogravure consists of engraving the image onto an image carrier. In gravure printing, the image is etched onto a cylinder because it uses a rotary printing press. Gravure cylinders are made of copper-plated steel or aluminum that is engraved or etched and then chromed. A rotogravure printing press has one printing unit for each color, typically CMYK or cyan, magenta, yellow and key, which is black. The number of units differs depending on what colors are required to produce the final image. The vast majority of gravure presses print on rolls of paper rather than sheets of paper. Rotary gravure presses are the fastest and widest presses in operation, printing everything from narrow labels to 12-foot wide rolls of vinyl flooring. Supplementary operations may be in line with a gravure press, such as saddle stitching, facilities for magazine or brochure work. Once a staple of newspaper photo features, the rotogravure process is still used for commercial printing of magazines, postcards and product packaging. Letterpress printing from raised metal type was the primary means of mass communication for over 500 years. While no longer an economically important segment of the printing market, letterpress continues to live on for specialized commercial applications. Letterpress printing was the normal form of printing text from its invention by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century until the 19th century and remained in wide use for books and other uses until the second half of the 20th century. In addition to the direct impression of inked movable type onto paper or another receptive surface, letterpress is also the direct impression of inked printmaking blocks such as photo-etched zinc, linoleum blocks, wood engravings. Letterpress publishing has in recent times undergone a revival in the USA, Canada and the UK under the general banner of the small press movement. Renewed interest in letterpress was fueled by Martha Stewart Weddings magazine, which began using pictures of letterpress invitations in the 1990s. This led to an increase in demand of invitation cards printed using letterpress. Flexography is a printing process which uses a flexible relief plate. It can be used for printing on almost any type of surface, including plastic, metallic films, cellophane, and paper. It is widely used for printing on the non-porous required for various types of food packaging. Now let us discuss the various steps utilized for flexography. These steps are plate making, mounting, printing. Plate making uses light-sensitive polymer. A film negative is placed over the plate, which is exposed to ultraviolet light. The polymer hardens where light passes through the film. The remaining polymer has the consistency of chewed gum. It is washed away in a tank of water, followed by washout process. The second method used a computer-guided laser to etch the image onto the printing plate. Such a direct laser engraving process is called digital plate making. The third method is to go through a molding process. The first step is to create a metal plate out of the negative of our initial image through an exposition process, followed by an acid bath. This metal plate in relief is then used in the second step to create the mold that could be in bakelite board or even glass or plastic through a first molding process. Once cooled, this master mold will press the rubber or plastic compound through a second molding process to create the printing plate. Mounting. For every color to be printed, usually this is cyan, magenta, yellow and black, a plate is made and eventually put on a cylinder which is placed in the printing press. To ensure an accurate picture is made, mounting marks are made on the flexographic plates. Then the image transferred from each plate has to fit exactly in the images transferred from the other colors. Highly accurate and specific machinery is made for mounting these plates on the printing cylinders. Printing. A flexographic print is made by a positive mirrored master of the required image as a 3D relief in a rubber or polymer material. Flexographic plates can be created with analog and digital plate making processes. Gravure printing, photomechanical intaglio process in which the image to be printed consists of depressions or recesses on the surface of the printing plate. The process is the reverse of relief printing, in which the image is raised from the surface of the plate. The printer forms the image by cutting into the plate by hand or by using acids or other chemicals to etch the plate along the lines of the desired image. Then the printer covers the plate with ink and wipes the ink from the higher surface, leaving the depressions or intaglio areas filled with ink. Paper pressed to the plate then absorbs ink from the depressed areas. Changing the depth of the depressions provides tonal gradations in the printed image. The gravure process requires careful preparation, but it produces good printing quality and color even on less expensive paper. Usually, gravure is used for long runs of magazines and catalogs and color supplements for newspapers. The process was originally developed for high-quality picture reproduction. It is also used to make art prints. Screen printing is one of the cheapest printing processes and can be done fairly easily. It is a printing technique that uses a woven mesh to support an ink blocking stencil. The attached stencil forms open areas of mesh that transfer ink or other printable materials which can be pressed through the mesh as a sharp-edged image onto a substrate. A roller or squeegee is moved across the screen stencil, forcing or pumping ink past the threads of the woven mesh in the open areas. Screen printing is also a stencil method of printmaking in which a design is imposed on a screen of silk or other fine mesh, with blank areas coated with a waterproof substance, and ink is forced through the mesh onto the printing surface. It is also known as silkscreen, serigraphy, and serigraph printing. Out of all the printing processes, offset and digital are the most common. Large companies lean toward using offset presses for commercial printing because these tend to be more cost efficient in bulk quantities. The process involves transferring an inked image from a plate to a rubber mat and then onto paper, hence the name offset printing. Advantages of offset printing include consistent high image quality, fast production of printing plates, longer printing plate life. Cost. Offset printing is the cheapest method to produce high quality printing in commercial printing quantities where large quantities are required. Electrophotography or xerography is a dry photocopying technique invented by Chester Carlson in 1938. The printing technique used in copy machines, laser and LED printers. It uses electrostatic charges, dry ink, toner and light. A selenium-coated photoconductive drum is positively charged. Using a laser or LEDs, a negative of the image is beamed onto the drum, cancelling the charge and leaving a positively charged replica of the original image. A negatively charged toner is attracted to the positive image on the drum. The toner is then attracted to the paper, which is also positively charged. The final stage is fusing, which uses heat and pressure alone or light to cause the toner to permanently adhere to the paper. Digital, in contrast to the traditional print processes, is a direct to output device process, thus it does not need a pre-press. As an alternative, the image is created on the computer and transmitted directly to the output device. Output devices such as inkjet printers are developed with a specific ink and ink delivery system in place which is unique to each digital press. The type of equipment chosen is also driven by the product produced. Though one of the drawbacks of digital printing is that it has a higher cost per page than more traditional offset printing methods, but this price is usually offset by the cost saving in avoiding all the technical steps in between needed to make printing plates. It also allows for on-demand printing, short turnaround, and even a modification of the image, thus savings in labor and ever-increasing ability of digital presses means digital printing is reaching a point where it will match or overtake offset printing technology's ability to produce larger print quantities at a lower price cost. Now we have come to the last topic of today's lesson: types of paper. Now, before discussing different variety of papers and points to consider while selecting a particular type of paper, let us discuss the history of paper briefly. History of paper. The word paper is derived from papyros, ancient Greek for the cyperus papyrus plant, which was used in ancient Egypt for writing before the development of paper in China. Though papyrus was lamination of natural plants, while paper is manufactured from fibers. Writing was invented much before the invention of paper, and since then, people have been looking for a cheaper and more accessible way to put down the written words on. It took 3000 years to come up with paper. Paper was invented around 100 BC in China. In 105 AD, under the Han Dynasty Emperor Ho Ti, a government official in China named Cai Lun was the first to start a paper making industry. Cai Lun seems to have made his paper by mixing finely chopped mulberry bark and hemp rags with water, mashing it flat, and then pressing out the water and letting it dry in the sun. His idea was very successful and paper began to be used all over China. After this, it took another 1000 years before people were using paper all over Eurasia. By the 400s AD, people in India were also making paper. After slightly more than 500 years, people in the Abbasid Caliphate began to use paper. There was a big battle in 751 AD in Samarkand where the Chinese and the Arabs were fighting for control. The Arabs captured some Chinese men. Some of these Chinese men knew how to make paper, and they described it to the Arabs as the price of their liberty. People all over the Islamic world soon began using paper from India to Spain. But Christian people in Europe were still using parchment. By 1200s, the Christians conquered Islamic Spain, and as they took over Spain, they also learned how to make paper. By 1250 AD, the Italians had learned how to make good paper and sold it all over Europe. In 1338, French monks began to make paper. By 1411, people in Germany began to create their own rag paper. Paper selection is a vital part in print projects. Selecting a paper can often be very confusing. There are various different types and brands of paper available today. When selecting paper, be sure to keep in mind that the choice you make for your project will mark how the printed piece is received by its prospective audience. Some important elements which differs one sheet of paper from another are weight. The weight of a paper refers to its thickness and is measured in pounds. Opacity. A paper's opacity is determined by its weight, ingredients, and absorbency. A paper's opacity determines how much printing will show through on the opposite side of a sheet. Brightness. The brightness of a sheet of paper measures the percentage of a wavelength of blue light it reflects. The brightness of a piece of paper is usually expressed on a scale of 1 to 100, with 100 being the brightest. Most papers reflect 60 to 90% of light. The brightness of a paper affects readability. Now let us quickly discuss different types of papers commonly available for printing. Matte paper looks dull and lusterless. A good use of matte paper would be areas where the lighting might cause reflections. Glossy paper is the most common paper for printing photos. It produces a sharp and vibrant image. Gloss laminated. The main photo is on the front along with a gloss laminate coat applied, which makes it even shinier. Stickers are often printed onto glossy paper with a sticky back, which you simply peel off. Pulp is a dry, fibrous material prepared by chemically or mechanically separating fibers. Pulp is normally used for business cards. Silk coating produces a result somewhere between matte coated paper and glossy paper. The colors are still vibrant, but the glossiness is reduced. Iron on transfers. Using a standard inkjet printer, you are able to print your designs and then iron it onto your t-shirt. In today's session, we have discovered various printing processes including cylinder, rotogravure, letterpress, flexography, gravure, screen, offset, electrophotography, digital, followed by a brief history of paper and description on various types of paper utilized for printing. Thank you for being with us. Hope you all had a great learning experience.